It was a couple of years ago here on drcinvests that I offered a number of ways for you to save money, whether for that trip to Europe or, more relevantly, to fully fund your IRA account. And again, it's not redundant. It's individual retirement arrangement account. And the idea was to prioritize one's efforts to an effective achievement of either that trip or fully funding your IRA. And indeed, some of the ones that people might first think about turned out to be irrelevant. You know, turning off the nightlife, not tipping as much, recycling those aluminum cans, and that still remains true, but an update is appropriate. I've added some, I've dropped some from the list of the prioritized places for you to save. I added avoiding beggar requests, bumming the cigarettes for those of you who do, or not playing the lottery, partly because it turns out to be number 4 on the list. I kept on the driving slower, although I'll be the first to admit I'm probably not going to not do that very often. I left on the fluorescent bulbs savings, although now it's almost a moot issue. The idea of street parking instead of paying to, for the event parking, concerts, sports. Turns out it's kind of relevant on the list. And some of the priorities changed because of the changes in the types and rates of the cash rebates from those credit cards. And again, I made it into a pie chart, and to make it a little bit easier to digest, converted it over to 3 areas. Good for the ecology, just because you're cheap, and those that are financial. I did leave out again washing or not washing your own car, partly because I think that's more of a lifestyle choice, and still I'm not sure whether or not you can say that's really good or not for the ecology. While not a major component of all the savings possible, the financial ones associated with credit cards have changed, demonstrably so. Capital One, in addition to their 1.5% regular card, has a 4% on restaurant card called the Saver Card, albeit, while it's nice if you've been grandfathered in, any new holders will have to pay an annual fee. The Chase card, with its problematic quarter adjustments, has a 5%, pretty darn attractive, although it turns out that when I did some computations, that maybe only saves you $10-15 per quarter, and it's associated with gas stations, groceries. The end of this year, it's associated with department stores, appropriate for Christmas, Hanukkah shopping, but again, we'll see if that occurs next year. And updating where to place those savings, besides that trip to Europe, my favorite, because frankly I've been locked out, is those IRA accounts. Again, there's the deductible, traditional, taxable in, taxable out, and non-taxable in and out Roth. Again, it's still $5,500 per year or $6,500 a year max for any combination if you're over 50, and again, that's called a catch-up rule, and now applies to the spouse, whether working or not. For the deductible taxable IRA, and if you have that little no box on the tax form when you're doing your own taxes, notice the limits are a little bit stringent, and the married non-working spouse has the qualification associated with the Roth, and notice those are a lot more generous, and notice those are sliding scale numbers, with the lower number being where you have the full deduction allowed, and the maximum number being is where it's cut off. And notwithstanding some self-appointed investment gurus, the Roth non-taxable IRA is not appropriate for everyone. If you're in a state that has a high tax bracket, or you're in a state of paying high taxes, then the Roth is appropriate. On the other hand, if you're in states that have no income tax, or just not paying as much tax, you're actually better off with a traditional IRA. Of course, notwithstanding the fact that with a Roth, for those in, say, a one-third tax bracket, you are setting aside 50% more, approximately so. And it goes without saying, but does bear repeating, that if you start 10 years earlier, you double the amount 40 years later. If you use no-load, low-expense ratio mutual funds, you can double it again. And of course, if you started later, instead of, say, 20 instead of 30, well, then the 40 years out would then be 70 instead of 60. But you know what? That advice is still sound. From Dr. C. Invests.